I start by saying, as one of the longest in the tooth contributors to these wonderful seminars, how much I and many of us enormously appreciate what Anna and Brian have put into them. I've been talking at these seminars for 35 years or so, and so I have benefited more than most from this amazing coming together of collectors, people from the trade, people from museums, academics, and Europeans, including Brits, we still count as Europeans, Americans, and others. So thank you, Brian, thank you, Anna, for all you've done to bring us all together over so many years. My story begins in Florence, and like so much art history, with bankers. For most of the 15th century, if a member of one of the great mercantile or banking families of Florence wanted luxury ceramics, they were likely to order not pottery made in Italy, which was relatively humdrum, but the glamorous and expensive lusterware made in the workshops of Islamic potters who'd settled in Manises, near Valencia, on the east coast of Spain. This was what the Italians called maiolica, apparently conflating the Spanish expression obra di Malaga, Malaga ware for lusterware, with the maiolica, the name in Italian of the island of Majorca, which was just off the coast of Valencia and which they knew better. Here is a vase made with the arms of the Medici, probably made for Lorenzo de' Medici in Manises after 1465, when those three fleurs-de-lis were added to the arms of Medici. Great wing-handled vase echoing the form of the Alhambra vases of the 14th century. On the left, a plate with another Florentine family, the Zati, with this flower and tendril decoration, which was a favorite form for Manises exports to Italy. This vase has the arms of Medici impaling the arms of Orsini for Lorenzo de' Medici, ruler of Florence, known to contemporaries as Lorenzo the Magnificent, and his wife Clarice Orsini, probable portrait of Clarice on the right, Lorenzo on the left. They were married in 1469, and the vase was probably made for them in Montelupo about 1480. You can see that the flower decoration imitates the plate, the Hispano-Moresque plate you saw on the left, while the form is a recreation of the wing-handled vase of the Manises vase you saw on the right. This vase, with the arms of the wealthiest and most powerful man in Florence and his wife, marks for me the moment at which Italian tin-glazed pottery comes of age, conquers the top of its own home market from imports, and the following decade saw a dizzying rise in technical and artistic sophistication of Italian maiolica. Lorenzo himself realized the potters of his day were doing something unprecedented. On the 4th of April, 1490, he wrote to Galeotto Malatesta, Lord of Rimini, 2 days ago, I received with a letter from your honor those pottery vessels which you've graciously sent me. Since they are perfect and much to my taste, they gave me great pleasure. I value these vessels more than if they had been of silver, because they are excellent and rare and new to us here. North of the Alps, Matthias Corvinus, the humanist king of Hungary, had married in 1476 Beatrice of Aragon, daughter of the king of Naples. Beatrice's sister, Eleonora, was married to the Duke of Ferrara. In 1486, the Ferrarese ambassador in Budapest wrote to the Duchess, recommending that what would give pleasure to Queen Beatrice as a present would be earthenwares from Faenza, and she would be more delighted with this than if it was silver, that same rhetorical comparison that pottery can equal silver in value. At around this time, it was potters not from Faenza, but from Pesaro, rival ceramic center, who made for the Hungarian monarchs a service as sophisticated and elaborate as any maiolica made up to that date. The surviving pieces of this service have the arms of Matthias and Beatrice under a royal crown. It is the earliest maiolica service we know of, made for royalty, or for major clients outside Italy. My own guess is that the service was a gift to Beatrice from her cousin Camilla Sforza, regent of Pesaro. Camilla took an interest in the local artistic pottery industry of Pesaro. In 1486, she issued an edict prohibiting imports of maiolica into Pesaro to protect local producers. The edict noted that Pesaro pottery was the most beautiful made in Italy and is praised by those who understand the art within and beyond Italy. These documents and objects record a pattern of collecting and of rhetoric, suggesting that in the late 1400s, prominent Italians were beginning to take an interest in ceramics as a serious art form. It was described as more appreciated than silver, as having value of novelty as well as beauty, as bringing credit and prosperity to the town where it was made, and as requiring good artistic judgment to be appreciated. I'm afraid the map is a little small and I can't make the little highlighter work, but on the east coast you can see Pesaro, and just inland from Pesaro, Urbino, and the little town of Castel Durante, now called Urbania, which were three towns which were prominent in maiolica production. There is Urbino with the Federico da Montefeltro's great ducal palace, and here is the drawing of it with the addition of several small towers that never existed by Cipriano Piccolpasso, who was a soldier and administrator born in Castel Durante, who wrote about 1557 the illustrated manuscript, the three books of the art of the potter, intended for publication but never published, and now in the V&A, but an incomparable source for how maiolica was made. After 1500, Pesaro was superseded as a centre of fine maiolica by the ducal capital Urbino and the neighbouring towns of Castel Durante, and inland just over the mountains, Gubbio, which I hope you can see on the map, I can't see it from here, which is, although now in a different region, the region of Umbria, was in the Renaissance part of the Duchy of Urbino. This bowl, now in the Met, has the arms of Pope Julius II. There he is, painted by Raphael, the patron of Raphael and of Michelangelo. The Della Rovere arms, punning on the name of the Pope's family, Rovere, an oak tree, the same word as our Quercus robur, are placed beneath the papal crossed keys and tiara. The subsidiary shield has the arms of a Bolognese senator, Giorgio Manzoli, and it's likely that the bowl was a gift to the Pope from him. The bowl, as you see at the back, is dated the 12th of September 1508 and marked as made in Castel Durante by Zoan Maria, apparently a potter named Giovanni Maria. Though archival research has not yet conclusively identified this Giovanni Maria, the artist who decorated this bowl, beautifully composed with its classicizing satyrs and putty cheerfully making music, produced one of the great masterpieces of Renaissance maiolica. I just come back this weekend from Urbania, as Castel Durante is now called, and it is very odd. I had a very dusty afternoon trying to find fragments excavated there which in any way correspond to this, and there's a curious and unexplained lack of them. One may ask why Manzoli, if he was the patron, placed the order in Castel Durante, rather than in the equally flourishing ceramic centre of Faenza, which is much closer to Bologna. Bologna is in 1508, Pope Julius II was, there was a great ceremony at Bologna which Julius II attended, and this seems to have been the occasion of the commission. The exact circumstances are unknown, but it seems likely that the Pope's nephew, Francesco Maria della Rovere, was in some way involved. Francesco Maria had succeeded as Duke of Urbino, of which Castel Durante was part, in April 1508. He travelled to Bologna to be invested as Captain General of the Papal armies by the Pope on the 4th of October that year. So that's 3 weeks after the date of the bowl. Whatever the details, this seems an object linked to the power politics of the age, perhaps representing a wish by the new Duke of Urbino to promote the rapidly growing local maiolica industry. Francesco Maria, Duke of Urbino from 1508, and his wife, Eleonora Gonzaga, daughter of the ruler of Mantua, Francesco Gonzaga, and his wife, Isabella d'Este, the celebrated First Lady of the Renaissance. Both by Titian. The oak tree becomes, the oak leaves, intertwined oak leaves, become a favorite motif in Urbino maiolica. Here is a plate with those intertwined oak leaves with acorns, and the drawing of the pattern from Piccolpasso's treatise, and which is captioned as, "This pattern is much in use with us for the veneration and duty we owe to the oak tree, in the shade of which we live happily, so this can be called the Urbino style of painting." In November 1524, Duchess Eleonora wrote from Pesaro to her mother in Mantua, "I have had made a service," a credenza is the word she uses, "of earthenware pottery, since the masters of this land of ours have some reputation for good workmanship. I shall be pleased if your Excellency likes it, and if you will make use of it at Porto, since it is a villa thing, a cosa da villa." 3 plates surviving from the Isabella service, the British Museum, the Hockermeyer collection, and Boston, and Leonardo's much earlier drawing of Isabella d'Este above. Porto Mantovano, mentioned in the letter, was Isabella's country villa, now vanished outside Mantua. The phrase cosa da villa, a villa thing, is an eloquent one. When Isabella was not at court, but off duty, in the relaxed world of her country villa and its gardens, in the company of other women, of men of letters and musicians, maiolica with classical subject matter like this provided a starting point for literary conversation. All 3 of these subjects are from Ovid's Metamorphoses. The painter was the finest artist of the first generation of historiato maiolica painters in Urbino, Nicola di Gabriele Spraghe, who called himself Nicola da Urbino. I hope you can see, even in this straightforward comparison, that the plate at the British Museum, top left, if you look at the figure of Apollo left, and then you look at this figure of Apollo among the Muses, on this signed fragment in the Louvre from Raphael's Parnassus, and you can make out the monogram Ncola for Nicola da Urbino at the bottom. Isabella d'Este's husband, Francesco Gonzaga, had died in 1519. The arms on Isabella's service, so his arms, Gonzaga, impaling hers, d'Este, which was and is the normal heraldic way of showing the arms both of wives and of widows. Objects with impaled arms like this are often described as having his and her arms, but at least as often, impaled arms have a specific reference to a wife, or as here, a widow. This plate was made in the workshop of Maestro Giorgio in Gubbio, specialist in luster, in 1528. The arms are Orsini impaling Della Rovere for Pope Julius II's illegitimate daughter, Felice della Rovere, who was the widow of Gian Giordano Orsini. In 1528, Felice was living at Fossombrone, close to Urbino. The cataloguer of the Lehmann collection, my late and much missed friend Jörg Rasmussen, suggested the plate might have been a gift to Felice from Francesco Maria. But it was Duchess Eleonora who had a house near Felice's at Fossombrone, and the 2 women were friends. It seems much more likely to have been a gift to Felice from Eleonora than from her husband. So it's another case of maiolica as a gift between women. Duke Francesco Maria was a professional soldier and spent much of his reign away from Urbino on military duties. There's little tangible evidence that he himself took much interest in maiolica or in art at all, despite the presumably commissioning the Titian portraits. But in the 30 years of his reign, the maiolica industry in 3 towns of the duchy, Urbino, Castel Durante, and Gubbio, achieved unequaled artistic success. Duchess Eleonora may have been more actively involved in the promotion of this local industry and in its diplomatic potential than her husband. In a letter written to her from the papal court in Viterbo in 1528, soon after the sack of Rome had driven Pope Clement VII out of the city, the Urbino ducal agent reported that he asked the Pope's steward why the Pope did not eat off earthenware plates painted with figures, what we call historiato now, and the reply had been that he used such plates only when dining with cardinals. The agent went on to suggest to the Duchess that it would be advantageous to send a service of Urbino pottery quickly to the Pope. There could not be a better time, he wrote, for them to arrive, since he's almost used up a service made at Faenza. But quickly, for the moment is now. These correspondents saw political advantage to the state of Urbino if the Pope was seen to be using Urbino earthenware rather than the rival products of Faenza. And it was the Duchess, not the Duke, who was thought to be the most effective person to act. In this context, it seems likely, though we have no documents, that the Historiato service bearing the arms of one of the most influential people at the French court, Anne de Montmorency, Grand Master of France, was some kind of diplomatic gift, perhaps from Francesco Maria. This plate from the set has Hercules killing the many-headed Hydra, based on an engraving after Rosso Fiorentino, and if you can read the inscription, it says that it was made in the leading Urbino workshop, that of Guido di Orentino, in 1535. And here is Anne de Montmorency after Clouet. In 1538, Francesco Maria died, and his son Guidobaldo II succeeded to the duchy. Here's Guidobaldo, very, very handsome dog. There is evidence that though his own preferred residence was Pesaro, on the coast, he took a more active role in promoting the Urbino maiolica industry than his father had. This plate is from an extensive service with Guidobaldo's arms. You can see the oak tree, I think, in the top right-hand corner of the arms. Again, I can't really see from here. And in the center, what heralds call a pale, a central vertical stripe with the tiara and cross keys of the papacy, denoting Guidobaldo's role as Captain General of the papal armies. And the inscription reads GVVD, Guidus Ubaldus Urbini Dux, Guidobaldo, Duke of Urbino, a gift to Fra Andrea Valatorano, a gift from Guidobaldo to Andrea Ghetti da Volterra, who was an Augustinian friar and preacher, with whom presumably the Duke had some spiritual connection. Interesting, this notion, which we find in other cases, of great people giving presents with their own arms rather than commissioning things with the arms of the recipient. In his Lives, Vasari tells how the Venetian-born painter Battista Franco was summoned to Urbino by Guidobaldo to paint the vault of Urbino Cathedral, but the results were deemed disappointing. Then the Duke had Battista made, Vasari goes on, a large number of drawings which, adopted for that most elegant of all Italian wares, came out as something exceptional. From them were made many and various sorts of pottery, enough to make and do honor to a royal credenza, and the painting on them could not have been better had it been done in oils by excellent masters. Duke Guidobaldo sent a credenza of this pottery to the Emperor Charles V, and one to Cardinal Farnese, that's the great, mighty Cardinal Alessandro Farnese, brother of his wife Vittoria. Guidobaldo married Vittoria Farnese in 1548, and Franco's drawings were made about that time. The subjects were from the Trojan Wars, and this plate shows King Priam receiving Helen into Troy, one of the brilliant acquisitions made at John Mallet's instance for the V&A. The drawing on your right is apparently an early copy of Franco's original, probably made in a maiolica workshop. You can see that the border pattern on the plates is symmetrical, and so economically, the designer only has to give a left half because the right-hand half is a mirror image of the left. About this time, a few years later, full Historiato was beginning to give way, for the highest status Urbino maiolica to the fantastical decoration on a white ground which acquired in the 16th century the name grotesques. The dominant figure in the exploitation of the new fashion was Guido Durantino's son, Orazio Fontana. Grotesque decoration was based on the ancient Roman wall paintings that had been found in excavated buildings in Rome, known as caverns or grotte, therefore grotesques. Above all, the greatest source was the so-called Golden House of the Emperor Nero, next to the Colosseum. Vasari tells how about 1560, Guido Baldo again commissioned a series of drawings for a prestigious credenza, this time from the painter Taddeo Zucchero and his brother Federico. A service made from these drawings was sent in 1562 as a gift to King Philip II of Spain. The subject of the service was the victories and triumphal pageants of Julius Caesar. A contemporary noted that more care has been taken over this earthenware service than if it had been made of precious stones. There is one piece remaining in Spain that may have been part of the original series, this bowl, which came to the Prado from the Spanish royal collections. The scene within is derived from a drawing by Taddeo. It shows what appears to be and what has frequently been described as a naval battle. But it's actually a staged theatrical event in Rome when, as described by the historian Dio Cassius, Caesar had the Campus Martius deliberately flooded so that a kind of gladiatorial combat between ships could be staged. On 15th of January 1563, the writer Annibale Caro wrote from Rome to Duchess Vittoria Farnese asking for help in retrieving the drawings for Taddeo Zucchero. He wrote, "Your husband commissioned here numerous drawings of various stories for a maiolica credenza in Urbino. The service was made and the drawings have stayed in the hands of the master potters, who do not, as a rule, get to keep them. Whether or not Taddeo ever got his drawings back, copies of them were used in the Fontana workshops and others for years afterwards. This example perhaps takes its form from a prototype in Mannerist silver, with these swans in relief on the back, though I've never actually found a surviving example." My final example turns us back towards Spain, where we began. This fantastically shaped container, little damage, but it had pouring spouts left and right, and the plate on the left have the arms of Zúñiga. The flasks on the right have the arms of another Spanish grandee, Fernando, Count of Limos. In 1593, Juan de Zúñiga, Count of Miranda, was viceroy of the Spanish kingdom of Naples, which was firmly under the control of the Spanish crown, and he was based in that city. In 1599, the Count of Limos took up the same post. In 1593, and then again in 1599, as we know from relatively recently published documents, Isabella della Rovere, sister of the Duke of Urbino, commissioned from Francesco Patanazzi, who was now in charge of what had formerly been the Fontana workshop in Urbino, two large services of maiolica, una credenza di vasi historiati et agrotesca, one of which consisted of no less than 377 varied pieces. These 4 pieces, 2 and 2, were part of these 2 gifts from the sister of the Duke of Urbino to the wives of the successive, newly arrived viceroys. And the heraldry give these 2 sets key documentary value for the production of the Patanazzi workshop. Without the archival discoveries, we would never have known the involvement of women, both as patron and recipient of these sets. In this sort of gift, the personal and the diplomatic become intertwined. The argument of this talk has been the Dukes of Urbino and members of their households promoted and exploited the art for which Urbino had become famous, both for personal and for diplomatic purposes. And as I say, the line between the diplomatic and the personal is sometimes difficult to draw, particularly in the case of women. In particular, the documents show that female members of the ducal family were prime movers in commissioning maiolica, and that gift-giving between women was a factor in bringing about major maiolica commissions. Thank you.